I do not buy into this manipulated situation. Managed, maybe. Massaged, okay. Watched, maybe. I don't think the gold price is going to we're not going to wake up on a Monday and see it $400 higher. It doesn't work that way because the gold price doesn't move on demand. It moves because of a factor that I explained in the newsletter. It's very easy to watch, and I'm watching it here all the time. And so what I see when I look at that is it's in an uptrend right now.
Hello and welcome back to Soar Financially, where we discuss the macro to understand the micro. My name is Kai Hoffman. I'm the @JR Mining Guy on Twitter and your host for this conversation today. And it is an exclusive. We're being joined by E.B. Tucker of the Tucker Letter. And I'm really looking forward to this discussion because he can really bring the macro and the micro together. The macro, of course, being the global economy, U.S. economy for us. Where are things headed? How are things going? How strong is the economy right now? And the micro is for us the gold space, the silver space, the commodities, but also mining stocks. So we're trying to tie it all together and see where things are headed. We had EB on, and he joined us in Vancouver at the Vancouver Resource Investment Conference just at the end of January. So we're going to talk about some of the calls he's made, update some of his calls, and get an overall view, like how have things changed the last 6 weeks? Because we had a Fed announcement as well. We got a new dot plot out as well. So lots to talk about. And EB has been on an interesting site visit as well. We're going to discuss, and we're going to learn how you can make your own money as well. So lots to discuss, lots going on. And let me introduce my guest on the screen. EB, it's great to see you again. Thanks for the exclusive.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, let's jump right in, EB. Like lots to talk about. On the economy side, has much changed since the end of January?
Yeah, I've lost track of time. I live in a warm climate, so it's hard to know when it's January or when it's July. But basically, I look out here and, for a free market, the U.S. certainly does now spend most of its time forecasting where it will set the price of money and, what it wants to do with stocks and commodities. And, remember the president said you're going to have $80 oil, and we just had $80 oil. It's kind of magic, and I think people fight that a lot. They fight that, and I think you should not fight anything in life. I think you should go with the flow, and when you go with the flow, you have more ability, and you just get more done, having better time. And if you do that in the stock market, you realize that they want the stock market to go higher. They just don't want it to go too high too fast. And I think with the gold price, I think the gold price is going to go higher, and they know that. So it's like a matter of trying to keep a lid on the pace of the price rising. If we look back to November, we see that that was kind of your last flush with the gold price. You basically around American Thanksgiving, you kind of perked up, and I think it was obvious that they couldn't hold gold there. When I say they, let me just be really clear that I just put out my newsletter today, ebtucker.com. I go into great detail on how the gold price behaves and why. And it's very easy to understand from my perspective. I've been doing this a long time, but I do not buy into this manipulated situation. Managed, maybe. Massaged, okay. Watched, maybe. I don't think the gold price is going to we're not going to wake up on a Monday and see it $400 higher. It doesn't work that way because the gold price doesn't move on demand. It moves because of a factor that I explained in the newsletter. It's very easy to watch, and I'm watching it here all the time. And so what I see when I look at that is it's in an uptrend right now. It's made what's called a golden cross, which is a moving averages are running in parallel together. And I think it'll stay that way for a little bit, and it'll reach a price where you'll find people that aren't willing to support it, and it'll settle down. And so anyway, so we're seeing that. Now, here's what's interesting, and this is where you come in, because I've known you for a while. I know what your focus is that the stocks are not participating. So I think it's very interesting that on the other screen over here, I've got all the mining stocks that I watch, and largely they're not moving. Now, of course, some of them are moving. You can find one here, one there that's moving. Mostly that's because of good operations. But as a group, they're not moving. And so what people need to understand is that there is no point in going into a market with hundreds of stocks and trying to find one or two of the hundreds that are going to move. There's no point in that, because what that is that's trying to walk outside in a hurricane and cut the yard or something. Maybe you can do it, but probably you're going to get killed. Now, the other side of the equation that people should look at is we used to have these cyclical markets. Okay, so like in the 2000s, we had several bull markets in the mining space and in the commodity sector overall. During these bull markets, almost everything went up. This was a time where you would want to do some private placements during the down period. You would do your homework, whatever, and then you would have an upswing. It would last a year or something, and you would have, conferences full and everybody's, making money and all this stuff. We don't have that anymore, so it's not happening. And so I try to explain to people in the letter today that, and that's after I printed my own money, which is true, by the way. I try to explain to people that gold's in an uptrend, but the stocks are not, and except for the few exceptions. And I just don't think it's wise to go out and look for the exceptions. Now, obviously, that's different if you're like backing an entrepreneur or whatever. I mean, there's always exceptions to the rules. I have a broker at Canaccord that's backed a bunch of entrepreneurs, and he's done really well. But for me, it's better to play ball during the bull market. And when you're not in the bull market, you go play with some other bull market. I mean, we just have not seen that happen. Now, I did share with the readers in the meat of the essay an indicator that I watch that tells me when it's time. I have a couple of these things, and I usually will put it in there and talk about it and show the charts. And people can just take it and use it you can do this yourself, by the way. That's the secret of the Tucker letter is basically you read it for a while and you don't need me anymore because I'm showing you how I think about all this stuff. It's really not that complicated. I mean, you have to understand that what I do is not that complicated. It's just the problem is that people really don't want to learn anything. And I don't mean like school. I just mean they don't really want to think about things. And what happens when you think about stuff and you get quiet and turn off your Twitter and turn off all this stuff. And of course, people should go to your Twitter page, of course, but not the other ones. But is that you start seeing that there's definite ways you can spot which way the wind's blowing, and you can get in front of it. It's pretty easy. But in the space that we're interested in, it's just not a great time to speculate. We talked about this in January, and the gold price is going up, but the stocks largely are not following.
No, absolutely. But the question is now, where is that disconnect coming from? Like, why is that disconnect as well? Right?
Several things. Yeah. So one of the things that's really important, and I don't mean to sound morbid, but a lot of people that drove that 2000 bull market are dead. So, I mean, if you think about it, if in the 2000s, there was a big group of people that were like 65-ish, and they were 35-ish during the 70s. And so they saw Greenspan or whoever it was at the time, they saw the housing market, they saw this stuff going on. It was crazy. Remember all this, adult entertainers buying 7 condos on a signature loan, they saw all this stuff. And so they bought gold. And those people are dead. I mean, think about it. They were 65 and now they're 85. I mean, maybe they're not dead, but they're not like actively speculating and attending the Vancouver conference scene and stuff. They're not doing that. And so they're gone. And so what does that mean? Because people say, oh, EB is the Grim Reaper. No, it's not true. The thing is that you got to understand, markets don't move because they're cheap. All right. So here, I used to sit on a bunch of boards. The number one problem with companies is that the executives can't tell their own story. That's the number one problem. And so when they start telling the story, it sounds like they're reading the instruction manual for a dishwasher or something. It's very boring. It's very hard to understand. And as you ask questions, they become arrogant, which is even worse. If you can't tell somebody something in a 45-second elevator ride and get them excited, it's too complicated. Okay, so you gotta go back to square one. Now, the mining business needs new people looking at it. And what's happened is that you've gone into this whole era where you've disconnected from the people. Now, I know this from sitting on the boards. I mean, I would come to the board with an idea, we should do this and this, and they'd be like, no, we should do what we did in the 80s. That's what we should do. And it's like all those people are dead. It's like they're gone. So what are you going to do? You're going to go ask 20 people 20, if you have kids or nephews or something, ask 20 people that are like in their 20s or something, right? They all have a stock trading account, all of them. And ask them, if you wanted to make money on one stock by the end of the year, would it be Nvidia? Would it be Tesla? Or would it be Agnico Eagle? And they would say, what do you mean, like a bald eagle? Yeah, like a bald eagle. No, Agnico Eagle. Like Agnico. Like it's like silver, nickel, and copper, whatever. They'd be like, what are you talking about? So they would say, Tesla. Okay, well, do you know how much copper it takes to Tesla? And they'd be like, you just get as much as you want. You just Elon just gets as much as he wants, which is kind of true, right? Because you listen to all these people, these mining CEOs. Now, remember, when you listen to a mining CEO tell you about some economic thing, don't forget that the job of that CEO, is to get you to buy stock so that that CEO can maintain an elevated lifestyle and keep the company going. People listen to these people like like they're an economist. It's like, look, I mean, I understand, sure, they can read a report from CIBC and see there's copper shortage predicted, whatever. But that's not their job. They're actually not really qualified to do anything except for to tell you about how to build a mine or whatever. Everything else is just selling you a fluffy idea. And the fact is that if you're buying it, you're the only one buying it. Nobody else is buying it. Now, that being said, before I get a LinkedIn box filled with hate from all the executives in Vancouver, you got to try to detach yourself from this, because when you see like this screen I've got over here, so like when you see this thing turn, okay, then you can get in there like Soros. Soros used to say, when you see a bubble, don't fight it, start blowing and help make it bigger, right? So the opposite is also true. When you see a stock, okay, every single stock, most of the stocks on, these are all these different screens I have are like lists of stocks that I watch. Okay, most of them in the mining business are in downtrends. Okay, now most of them in other industries are in uptrends. Okay, so like cybersecurity stocks, uptrend. Semiconductor stocks, uptrend. I mean, most of them are in uptrend. Now the mining sector, most of them are in downtrends. So when you see most of them in downtrends, why buy those stocks? I mean, gravity is taking them down to the point where everyone sells, and then finally something happens, and you can just wait for that, or you can buy in a diet-sized portion. Like, I used to know this guy who we would go out to. I like to eat at nice restaurants. I'm kind of like into food stuff. So they serve you like a little. And he'd be like, why is the portion so small? I'd be like, well, it's actually not. It's actually like sufficient. It's just that you've been eating at the Ponderosa Steakhouse for so long that, they just give you like a ton of junk food so that you feel like you got a lot of money. But, to have like, 2 ounces of Wagyu beef is like pretty nice. So my point is that like you can buy if you have a stock that you're into, and it's in a downtrend and you want to put it on your screen, I mean, you can like make an appropriate size portion so that you're watching it. That's fine. But what I'm saying is that why go big on something that's in a downtrend? It's just in a downtrend. It's like, it's not going to, I don't care if the CEO's like, yeah, the miracle's about to happen. Great. It's good for him, or her, not for you. Okay. Because they'll keep printing shares until the miracle happens. And you'll be, it's not like you'll have nothing, but you'll have less than you started with. And it's like putting a pencil in my kids have this pencil sharpener. I bought them this like high horsepower pencil sharpener. It's unbelievable. And this thing will eat the entire pencil. That's what happens to your investment until the bull market happens, because, you get it done. There's like a little eraser and like a tiny little tip left when the bull market happens. You're like, I don't feel so special. So just try to see it with that perspective and try to understand that is the winning perspective. Like you got to figure out, do you want to make money or are you on some kind of ideological quest that involves something other than money, which may be true. And if it's the case, that's fine. But personally, I don't like ideological quest because I grew up in the American South and you're inundated with ideological things all the time, and I got tired of it. I think it's better to find the bubble and blow it up.
No, absolutely. EB, I've been just laughing because you mentioned so many things that are very close and dear to my heart. Like, it's a completely different discussion. We can have that off camera as well, or maybe in a separate episode. But how do you break through that? Like, you can see behind me, that's a roll up banner, right? And you go down to the Vancouver Resource Conference, and for the last 15 years, every single booth has looked exactly the same, right? So things like that we can talk about, and how do you break through that? And it brings me sadly to another, or not sadly, but it's another emerging industries is Bitcoin, and the cryptos, of course, as well. Like, is there
Well, I
something
got
we can
that. I
actually
got
learn
that
from
over
that,
here.
right?
Yeah, I got
Right.
that over here. So,
So,
I mean,
like, what can we learn?
Yeah.
Given the fact, like, all the mining CEOs and the mining investors are super stingy, they're old, and they don't get new stuff, or they're really, what are they called, Luddites, right? Like, they're slow to adapt new technology.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I can tell you, I'm not trying to get myself, sued here, but I can tell you that I previously sat on a bunch of boards, and I have distinctly remember pitching to one of the boards, like, let's take one asset that we don't care about, like a low value asset, and let's tokenize the asset. Let's make the asset a tokenized asset, and then let's go around and explain to people that we took. Have you ever seen agreements in the mining business? I mean, it's like 100 pages of like 1987 typewritten, IBM typewriter, chicken scratch. It keeps getting added to, but like the lawyer will bring you this thing. It's like, here we go. I mean, he's like proud of himself. You're like, look, I mean, this is fine. Okay. Like, legally this holds up. Don't get me wrong. But what I'm saying is that we can tokenize that. And I cannot explain to you the negativity. I'm like, you guys, you're having trouble telling your story. Okay. You need a bigger audience, and you don't need a better story. In fact, you have the best story. But what you have to do is, okay, did you watch the show Winning Time on HBO about the Lakers? It's fabulous. Okay, so Jerry Buss basically figured out that the Lakers, there was this like stingy guy that owned the Lakers, kind of like you were mentioning the characteristics of some of the CEOs. And Jerry Buss was like, you got to make the experience fun. And the reason why you got to make it fun is you got to make people want to go to the forum and and party at the game instead of go to a restaurant or something on Wilshire and party there. So we got to make the game fun. Like, why do we have these, like boring dancers, cheerleaders that with pom poms? Like, let's make it like a really like a sizzling event. Anyway, so he like created this fun experience. Well, nothing really happened to the team. I mean, the team was like, it wasn't like winning championships before, but like the team was pretty cool before, it was fine. But what changed is his ability to share an experience that made you want to be a part of it, right? So you have to give people the feeling of, hey, if you are a Lakers fan, you're going to win championships, and it's fun to win. It's really fun, because you're winning and you're on the top of the pile, right? It's really exciting. Don't you want to be a part of that? Like, put on that yellow, gold and purple jersey and take off that, Sacramento jersey or whatever. Okay. So my point is that I encountered massive resistance. And so if you go to the Vancouver conference, as you and I have done, you notice that like 80% of the conference hall is walled off with a curtain. So there's nothing behind that. It's like, it's empty. It's a gigantic concrete floor. If you go to, like, for example, a cybersecurity conference or something, first of all, the admission is like $2,000, right? So don't tell the mining stock conference people, but forget about free admission. I mean, like, I have a bunch of cybersecurity stocks in the Tucker Letter portfolio because I think cybersecurity is the new national defense. I really think computers are going to replace missiles. So my point is that I cover this stuff. Forget about getting into that conference less than $2,000, and it's full. And guess who's in there? People of all ages: men, women, young people, interns, old people, retired people, board people, everybody is in there, and they are really in there. Not like the Vancouver thing where you spend the whole conference catching up with all the people that you haven't seen since the last conference and having open bar with them and stuff like that. Forget about that, right? So my point is that what you see is you've got to tell your story. You got to get good at telling your story, and you got to tell it to a bigger audience. And that is lost on the mining business. Like, forget about it. Nobody wants to hear it. It's very boring, and nobody's listening. And the audience is so small. Like, you could put them in like one activity van and drive away, and nobody would ever miss them. That's the audience. So go bigger. And anyway, so the mining CEOs out there, it's like, just think about what I'm saying. Like, I don't have anything to sell you. I don't sit on any boards, and I don't think it's a good job for me. Like, I don't want to sit on any boards. I really actually like should not be part of public companies. Like, what I do is I write, and sometimes being on a board distracts from that. And so for me, this is where I'm comfortable, is putting out the Tucker letter, ebtucker.com. So, but my point is that I think that if now's the time for these CEOs to stop doing the same thing they've been doing for years and years, which has been good to them, by the way. These people are well paid, okay? And the boards just kind of like rubber stamp pretty much whatever they want. And they keep thinking their option is going to be worth a lot. But let me tell you a little secret. Most of these people, if the stock went up 10 cents, they'd sell the whole company, okay? So like they're checked out, all right? And they're checked out because they're just kind of like painted themselves into a corner. And that's not the case with like a cybersecurity company. Like, the people are like, why would we ever sell this company? I mean, like, somebody's going to buy it for like a huge number, and it's going to be a bidding war. So you have to see kind of what are people responding to. And I don't mean like tell them some nonsense. I'm saying like tell them something that makes them want to be a part of it. That's the trick, is that make these people want to be a part of what you're doing and get excited. And then they tell somebody else. And soon you build a movement, and movements are powerful.
No, absolutely. There's a lack of good storytellers in mining these days. So absolutely. EB, following up on a couple of things you mentioned, and one of the questions I have, of course, for the mining stocks is how close are we to that capitulation moment, or have we seen it already?
No, you haven't seen it yet. And what I do, just so you know, is I try to never make the first dollar, because the first dollar is super dangerous, and you could get run over. And so what I have a series of indicators that I watch, and it's not like a system. I don't have it for sale. It's not secret. It works for me, and I share this with my readers because I'm like, you can do this, by the way. And when you see that shift, you can usually about 20% into the next move, you can see that shift. And then you start saying, here we go. And money starts coming in, and then more money comes in. And then what happens is like, I never, when I used to write huge newsletters, there was always this push to make a value pitch. And I tried to explain to the publisher, value pitches are traps. And what happens is that by the time you can make an argument that something is cheap, it's going to get cheaper. It's going to get cheaper. So what you want to do is you want to buy things that are expensive and watch them get more expensive. Okay. And so in the mining space, making the cheap argument is not, someday it will work. Okay. Like, the broken clock is right twice a day. So, I mean, someday, so you don't want to say it'll never work, because it will someday work. But for the average person, why risk hard-earned money on this type of gamble? I mean, honestly, the statistical odds of you having a good time, you just spend it on yourself, like just enjoy it yourself. I mean, I think, just so you know, I think people in the West have like a disease with money. I mean, they are like totally unwilling to spend money on themselves. It's really weird, unless someone will see and notice or something. That's different. But what I mean is like doing things that don't really make a lot of sense. That, like, I bought a piece of art last week. It's not here yet, or I would show it to you. But this girl drew this dramatic piece of art with colored pencil that looks like a photograph. I've never seen anything like it. And it was of a thing from Japan that like really spoke to me. It was like a contrast picture from Japan. It was like a worn out shoe, and then like a Marilyn Monroe magazine cover from both from the post-war era. So it was like you're wearing out your shoes walking to work, and then we got like a bimbo to advertise that you can look at in the magazine while you're walking to work. It was a contrast, right? Anyway, so my point is I bought that. It was super expensive, and people are like, why'd you buy that? I go, it's really cool, right? And it's not because it's really cool and you'll never know the full story behind it when you see it like around in my office or something like that. You'll never know. And it's not like I'm going to make money from it. And it's not like somebody's like, oh, wow. Forget about it. Sometimes I'll buy something that I just want to look at. And people say that's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy. But like, that's the point of all this. Like, another thing I do is I do like nonsensical things with my kids. They'll say, we want to go see something. And I'll just be like, next weekend we're going, and we'll fly there and we'll go see it. And it's a huge waste of money. And what I'm doing is I'm taking that money and I'm creating an experience for the kids that maybe they don't remember, but it definitely shapes their personality. So my point is like, I think this helps in your investing life, because otherwise you were hoarding. And we're grabbing on and hoarding, and we have this hoarding mentality, and we end up in losing situations. If you examine your behavior, you're like, I got ideologically hooked on that idea. I kept buying that mining stock. It kept going down, and then I sold it at the bottom, and then it went way up, and blah blah blah. And it's you know what I'm talking about, right? It's psychological, and I think that people just will not examine that. They will not do it, and it's like if you got $100,000, and put 10,000 to work. It's like, keep 90 for yourself. I mean, it's like, I'm just giving you an arbitrary number, but what I'm saying is that like everybody is so greedy that like they lose their focus gets all hazy, and then they get a bad result. You see what I'm saying? And so my point is, a lot of the stuff I'm explaining to people in the newsletter is like, look, I'm showing you the path, okay? And some of you are going to walk it, and some of you aren't going to walk it. Like, you're going to say this guy's crazy, which is true. I mean, I am. My lawyer says, if you're rich, you're eccentric. Okay, if you're poor, you're insane. That's what they say about you, right? So like, he goes, you're eccentric. So I'm like, okay, but the thing is that I'm trying to share the philosophy, and if you get the philosophy right, you're unstoppable.
No, absolutely. Oh, fully agree with that. The experience is over everything, in my opinion. And I have 3 young kids as well, so sharing as many experiences as possible. Like, I'm in Vancouver right now. The family is with me, so really important for me to have them around and show them and give them the experience. Absolutely,
Yeah.
I fully get it. There's one possibility, because you can always print your own money, apparently, and you've learned about that the other day. And I really want to share that experience with our audience as well. Like, tell us a bit about that, and how legal was it?
Well, I think technically it is legal, but next week I'm gonna go spend another kind of money. I don't want to blow the story for next time, but there is some sort of designation in the U.S. where you can create your own script for use within certain areas, and then certain states are allowing this and stuff. But what I did is people can ebtucker.com, you can see all the pictures of this. Is I went to this town that's been printing its own money for 100 years, and I actually ran the printing press with the local townspeople, the mayor, who I thought sounded like the president, local president, and the money printing guy, who sounded like Fed chairman. And they're like explaining to me that they create this money, they circulate it within town, the businesses benefit from it, and they stimulate things. And I'm like, these guys are like, miniature version of the president and the Fed chair. And it was really fun. I mean, the problem is I've got a bunch of the money. I ended up with like, this is like, multiple $100s of the stuff is wooden. I don't know if you can see, but I bought way too much of it, because, the problem is when you run a printing press is you don't know when to quit. I mean, you just keep printing. And I think it's fun to think about that, because imagine if you had the U.S. printing press. But
is it backed by anything, EB?
The merchant can take it and change it for these pieces of money, and at the Chamber of Commerce, and some merchants. I have some pictures of. I tried to spend it for like half a day. Some places took it, some places did not. And some just they don't buy into it. They're just like, no, I want a credit card. That's it. And so the whole premise is we're kind of explaining where we're going with all this, which is a little bit of a dark place. I mean, I got to tell you, what's going to happen is you're going to look back on 2024 and you're going to say, I didn't know how good we had it.
No, absolutely. I fully agree. Like the trends we're seeing right now.
You got to live now, man. You got to live right now is the time to live.
I don't see it getting better. And exactly as you said, like we're paying everything with credit card already anyway. More so in North America than in Europe. By comparison, Germany in particular is still a very cash heavy economy. But in North America, it's like everything here is like, I don't think I've spent a single dollar I got in my wallet sitting here right here. Right?
You can't get rid of it. Yeah, you can't get rid of it.
No, not really. It's like I've been carrying.
I've got tons of cash, and you
I've got like $150 here. Not to brag, but I won that money in a casino like 9 months ago, and I've been to US 3-4 times since, and I cannot spend it.
Can't spend it.
So, really interesting topic there. Let's talk about that though. Like, let's talk about the dark place we might be moving towards too, and that's digital money. Of course, it's not credit cards; it's digital money. Like, how is that going to shape the world, and how is that FedCoin maybe that initial trigger?
Yeah, I mean, I was the FedCoin guy back in 2016, and back then it was like a radical idea. I mean, people were like, "No way, I'm not going to go along with it." But you will go along with it, or else you. I mean, think about this, like. If you explain to someone what you have to do to get on an airplane now, and if you told that to somebody in 1995, they're like, well, I'm not doing any of that. I'm not going to, it just gets worse too, right? I mean, have you dealt with these American security people at the airport? I mean, they're like fully, body armored up and it's bad. And they have tons of power and, you're random screening, put your head in this thing. I mean, it's nonstop and you just don't get on the plane otherwise, right? So it's like, oh yeah, there's a loophole. Well, try the loophole. Watch what happens. You'd be there all day. So my point is that you're going to go along with it or else you're going to starve. And so you need to understand that now's the time to learn about this. But the essay today and the next few essays are explaining that this is a process and you don't just turn the light switch on, you set the wheels in motion and it takes several years to go. But if you think about it, if you and I were central planners, we have a few problems. Like one of the problems is counterfeiting. So that's less of a problem nowadays because there's no bills bigger than 100. So I mean, when there was $5,000 and $10,000 bills, that was a huge problem. But now there's not that many. And these wooden dollars, they prevent counterfeiting by signing. They sign the bill and they put a serial number and all this stuff. And the Fed tries to do the same thing. But counterfeiting is a big problem because it diminishes the power of the printed currency. And so the Fed's job is to destroy your money at the rate of about 2 or 3% a year, but not faster and not slower, because that creates an artificial amount of growth. And as I explained in the newsletter today, that keeps people sedated and they feel kind of comfortable with that. And so the FedCoin stops counterfeiting because what's going to happen is that they're going to utilize blockchain to introduce this currency. And everybody says, oh, yeah, blockchain. Yeah, I love that. I have blockchain stock. I like it. I got some crypto. Yeah, I love it. It's not the same thing. So what it is it's the same plumbing system. But instead of where Bitcoin validates the transaction using, thousands of computers, FedCoin will be maintained on a closed loop, probably like an MIT Watson style, IBM Watson style computer. Just a picture, just like a closed loop system. Same blockchain, closed loop. Now, to start conceptualizing this, I mean, Ethereum is less interesting than Bitcoin because of the fact that it is possible to hoard up enough control of that network to self-validate. You can where you can't really do that with Bitcoin. It's too complicated. So my point is that imagine a closed loop, so then you have no counterfeiting because every dollar has a notch on that blockchain. I mean, you could just have a quadrillion dollars, it's no problem because the quantum nature of computing makes the power of this thing limitless. And everybody's comfortable with blockchains. They say, man, my nephew made some money with, pancake coins. So I think that's fun. So anyway, so it solves that problem. Now, the second thing it does, if you're a central planner, I don't know if you've ever been to Washington, D.C., but really an amazing place. I mean, it doesn't produce anything, and it's basically like a, $4 or $5 trillion economy. I mean, it's nuts, man. I mean, the place is like top of the top, and there's no industry. And so it is able to skim off the top of the U.S. economy to the tune of about 18% a year, is my guess. I mean, if you think about, the size of the U.S. economy and then the federal, tax revenue take, probably like 18% a year. I mean, there's some number that they want. So, I mean, you make it out like people are evading taxes and all this stuff, whatever. But there's a sweet spot there where they get this amount of money. Now, with FedCoin, this becomes really easy because you set the tax code and it's automatic. It just takes the percentages of stuff and boom, it's like it's kind of like Grayscale or one of these ETFs. They just like take a certain amount of payment per year in the form of Bitcoin, off the top of the pile, right? It's super easy. So, I mean, and nobody really notices. And so that's what's going to happen with FedCoin, with taxing, is that, you won't be politicians won't go out and have to say so much about taxes, because right now, I just sent the IRS a check and it wasn't that big because I sent them 4 checks throughout the tax year, because you have to prepay your taxes. I mean, you have to send these like large estimates. And then if you come in, make less or make more, you adjust it. They don't let you just pay at the end. You have to pay all year. And it's called a pay-as-you-go system, is what my person told me. Anyway, so my point is that that'll be automatic. And so it'll take some of the resentment and bitterness out of writing that check. And it'll just happen. And so that's number 2. Now, number 3 is the most sinister, and that is behavior control. And so I want you to think about it like this. So everybody uses their phone to pay, and young people, they have, they pay with their watch. You've seen this, tapping their watch for a coffee and 30% tip, it's like this whole thing. It's almost like they're dancing at the counter, So there's no thought to even dig in their wallet. You don't even need pockets anymore. So my point is that what if you were on the Canadian, platform that you're not supposed to be on, and you're saying, Mr. Trudeau is just a sinister fellow, and we should get rid of him and all this stuff, and they say that's very naughty because he's the blessed candidate, and so you cannot speak out against him, or else it's like a thought crime, and your credit score gets whacked. Social credit score gets whacked because you're a fringe thinker and self-styled individual, is what they like to say in the U.S. And so let's make sure you're not drinking too much, or you're a cigar aficionado, so no tobacco for you, and no spending after 10, because that's a time when you should be studying Mr. Trudeau's manifesto. So anyway, so your FedCoin is all you got. I mean, you don't, maybe you have $100, right? So you have that $100 in the casino, you still have, years later, and that's real money, but it's like, it's not really enough money to even get like a sandwich or something. So you can't really do anything with it. I mean, if you notice, like $100, I mean, is like, I mean, I have like thousands of dollars, here in the office, and like, it's not that much money. I mean, you can't really do that much with it, right? I mean, you can't like do anything substantial with it, right? It's not like, like $100 is like lunch for 2, right? So it's not like you think about it, it's like there's no, the bills are still out there. So we see the bills, we feel comfortable that we see the bills, but they increasingly don't do anything for you. And so you'll still have them, but you won't be able to get very far. You won't be able to acquire things that you need and things that you want, or leisure activities or whatever. You won't be able to do that. And so the behavior control is the third thing. But I think those things are very plausible. They're easy to see. And now people always say to me, well, how do you know this? Well, the truth is I don't know this. And the truth is that it's unrealistic to ask me for proof of what the central planners of the world's largest economy, who, by the way, have substantial cyber attack and nuclear resources at their disposal, they're not calling me and telling me what they're going to do. So what you have to do in these cases, you have to say, like, what is logical? I mean, I've studied tons of history. Super easy to understand how people think. Humans haven't changed that much. And it's very logical to see that they've blown this thing into this huge debt-based system, which has ironically kept people very well behaved, because we all feel rich. I mean, nobody really feels poor. I mean, I remember, like, in the early 80s, I mean, it was like the society in the U.S. was still rough. It was like, when I was a kid, thinking back to, like, safety and kind of like what it was like to visit the major cities. And I mean, it was pretty rough. And now it's not that rough. I mean, like, you really got to be in a dodgy part of major city to, like, in Vancouver, for example, if you go to, like, East Hastings, there's a coffee shop I like on East Hastings. I walk there, and it's a little dodgy, but I'm like, you guys ever been to Philly? I mean, you ever been to Kensington?
I was just in downtown Portland, so.
But Portland, yeah, exactly. Portland is like edgy. Okay, it's like, I tell people it's sporty because, I mean, it's something bad could happen, but these are anomalies. I mean, there's not, like, largely. I mean, Times Square is filled with Dwayne Reed drugstores. It's not like, I remember when I was there as a kid. I mean, it was like crazy. It had like an energy that that was like dangerous. And same with DC. And DC was the murder capital. Remember, it was really bad. So my point is that put yourself in the situation of the central planners and think about what would you do, and what would why would you do it, and what would be logical, and how would you leverage technology, and whatever. And by the way, timetable wise, let me just throw this out there. I mean, about the time you start mining the last Bitcoin, okay, which will happen, by the way, it's probably about the time that this transition happens. I wouldn't be surprised if Bitcoin ends in kind of a mania of sorts, and just try to, like, role play that a little bit in your head. Just try to kind of, like, play a little, like, simulated. I used to play a lot of chess. I went to reform school. We played a lot of chess, and I was quite good at it. And so, like, you play a lot of simulations, where you kind of, like, put the board together and, like, what are the 4 or 5 different moves I could make, and what would happen, and how would it go? And I think like, Americans generally don't do that. They want, like, a very linear answer to things, and it's not so simple.
What'd you do to get into reform school there, EB?
It's a matter of it's a matter of perspective, right? I mean, I feel I was wrongly detained and sent to reform school, and my parental units obviously feel that they were in the right, but I haven't talked to them in a long time, so maybe I was right, but it's crazy because I went to this, like, controversial place where, like, a bunch of people died and all this stuff, and there's all these, like, documentaries coming, and this is a long time ago. This is in the 90s, but the 90s was like a time where we thought we had to do these, like, drastic and violent things to save our kids. I mean, it's like, it's really, I mean, Paris Hilton has a video on YouTube. It's pretty, like, sensitive, and I think she, like, has had she was at a school it was basically the school where I was, but it was, like, tangential, it was 2 different places, but she was there, and her mom is also in the video and, like, is talking about the whole experience. And anyway, so I mean, I just think people are starting to learn about this stuff. I mean, I was, like, out on a date with someone recently, and they were, like, emotional listening to it, because they were like, I've heard about this, I've heard about this place, it's like. So anyway, so my point is that, like, we were in this time where it was, like, completely normal to like, handcuff your kid and have bounty hunters take them to Idaho to chop wood for 3 years. It was like, now you don't even let the kid, like, it's like these people. You think about the society now, like I look at these kids now, and I'm just like, man, what were we doing?
You're not even supposed to say no to them anymore. So
yeah, you can't do that. It triggers them or something, right? So I mean, it's like, I don't know. And I don't have, like, a thing about it. Like, I don't really care, about the situation. I don't really care about anything, to be honest with you. But it's like I just think things are interesting, and I think back to the time, and I was like, teenager in the early '90s, and it's just crazy to like, you look at these how society flows, and I think when you get hung up on your situation, like when you get resentful, when you get upset, when you get whatever, is when you can't see anything, right? But if you just let go of all that and think things are interesting, then you start seeing all the patterns, and it's like, it's much more fun because you're just like, wow. I mean, like as a society, we medicated everyone, we just did all that stuff. We were like, yeah, I mean, you got to fix your kid, man, like it's fixing a Honda or something, right? And we did that, and then we had the 2000s, and then everybody's hooked on opioids, and now everybody's psychedelically tripping. So I mean, it's really interesting to look at these like trends, and because then when you do that with an open mind, you see the next trend, and you're like, so easy. It's like you start seeing it start to happen, and you're like, couldn't be easier. Just invest in this. And increasingly, I mean, I don't have any, no TV, no nothing, no Instagram, nothing. I mean, it makes it hard to socialize, but I mean, it's much better. I mean, because you just see everything. It's like you just see it happening, and it's so easy to place your trades. You're just like,
it looks like you got the code of the Matrix behind you there. So
yeah, I mean, it's just like you just, the trick is like constantly being learning and constantly being curious and constantly being open to new things and letting go. The letting go is like, I mean, I've had situations like believe me, where I feel like I was definitely treated very poorly, okay, in business. And the trick is to just completely let it go. And because when you're hung up on something, it's really dangerous. I mean, you basically restrict your ability to function and to see new information. That's a huge problem. And when you can't do that, it's when you get your head cut off in the battlefield. And you don't want that, because then you're out of the game. That's it. It's over. And so you have to let go of everything. And so that's why when I look back at, I'm writing another book, and I'm writing about this reform school thing. Like I'm writing in detail about this thing. My sister read the draft. She's like sobbing, but I don't care. She's like, why don't you care? I was like, well, it's just whatever. I mean, it's like, what are you going to do? It is what it is, right? I mean, it's like surviving something. What are you going to do? You're going to the rest of your life, you're not going to leave the house anymore. You just get on with it, man. You just get on with it. It's like, you're here till you're not here anymore. You know what I mean? Like everything is, you keep surviving. You just keep going. Like you want to have a full experience, and you don't want to be like, well, because of this other thing that happened that was unpleasant, I can't enjoy the next thing. It's not true. You can totally let go. And people will tell you this, by the way, that have been through traumatic stuff. Believe me, you'll talk to somebody, this conversation will come into your mind. You'll talk to someone that had some unfathomable event happen that you're just like, how did you live? And they'll just be like, I just lived. That's like, got on with it, man. Just what are you going to do? We're going to be dead someday. You might as well, go out to a nice dinner, enjoy yourself. I mean, and you start realizing that, we really cause ourselves a lot. We drive around with the emergency brake is what we do. And we have all these reasons for it. We have, and that hurts you in the market. Just so you know, this stuff that I'm talking about is big for market-based decision-making. It's really big, because you think about your big mistakes and you start tying the pieces together, and you're like, this is Tucker's telling me the real stuff, man. This is the deal, and that's what I write about, by the way. People should all read especially the first stories in my stuff. I mean, it's like every issue. This is the type of stuff we're talking about. This is what matters.
No, it's things that makes you think, like things you mentioned, like make you think about stuff, right? And
but we're not going to make you
like
think.
You mentioned,
we're not going to make you think too much. We're not going to. There's not going to be a test. So don't think we're going to it's not school, It's like. It's campfire stories with Uncle EB before you go to bed or something, before the s'mores come out. So
I was going to say,
fun.
we're recording this at quarter end, so maybe every end of the quarter we should do a test there, EB. So
yeah,
no,
it'll be easy. And you can by the way, you can cheat, because that's really the way things. They don't tell you that when you're a kid, but we won't penalize you if you cheat.
No, fantastic. EB, what an insightful and fantastic conversation. We'll definitely have you back on maybe at the end of next quarter, and we'll talk about some of the trends you've seen in the markets as well. And so I know you mentioned, but where can we find more of you? Where can we find your work?
ebtucker.com is the only place you can find me, and I'm not doing a lot of interviews. I don't sit on any boards. I don't have anything to talk about in that regard. But ebtucker.com, the Tucker letter, you can sign up for free. I'll come back and see you midsummer. Maybe. I mean, I could be talked into coming to Vancouver, so we'll maybe that can happen.
I was going to talk you coming into to Frankfurt.
I could be talked into coming to Frankfurt too. I was just in Switzerland in February, and I'm trying to go to Copenhagen. I could be talked into Frankfurt. I could be
fantastic. Let's talk about that off air. EB,
yes.
Really appreciate your time. Fantastic insights. I've really loved it, and my audience, I hope you loved it as well. Bit of a different discussion today, which I thought quite thought provoking. A lot of big topics have been touched on, so I hope that was some good food for thought here for you during this this time of challenging times here in the markets, and maybe helps you overthink and rethink and maybe look ahead a little bit as well. Smart mining investor here as well. So lots of food for thought, lots of learning from mistakes, and moving on, as you said, like maybe a nice dinner instead of participating in the next private placement here in the mining stocks. If you like this conversation, leave a like, leave a comment, and make sure to subscribe to the channel. It helps us out tremendously. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back with lots more here on Soar Financially. Thank you so much.